My son slapped and left our family house. 5 years later, he came back to claim his share of inheritance. The day my son slapped me was the day he walked out of our family house, vowing never to return. I watched him leave with tears in my eyes, my heart breaking in ways I can't describe. 5 years later, he showed up at my door, not with an apology, but with lawyers, demanding his share of the inheritance. This is the story of betrayal, silence, and the twist he never saw coming. What do you think happened next? Hello, family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. I still remember that evening as if it happened yesterday. The sky was heavy with rain, the kind that falls slowly, almost shyly, like it's waiting for something to break first. I had just finished setting the dinner table, my hands still smelling of roasted chicken and garlic. Lydia was beside me, helping without being told, the way she always did. She moved quietly, as if afraid her own footsteps would disturb the peace that wasn't even there anymore. From the living room, I could hear Clara's laughter. Loud, polished, fake. It was the kind of laughter that fills the air but never warms it. "Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with pride, "the party at the Grants' mansion last weekend was stunning. You should have seen how everyone kept asking about us. People love us, they said we're the perfect couple." Her words floated into the dining room like perfume, sweet but suffocating. Ethan chuckled. "Of course they did. You looked beautiful that night, Clara. You always do." I sighed quietly and tried not to show the ache that rose inside me. 5 years ago, Ethan would have bragged about our family's name, about how his mother raised him alone after his father passed, about the little shop I built from nothing. Now, all he could talk about was Clara and her fancy friends. "Dinner's ready," I called out, forcing a smile when they walked in. "Let's eat before it gets cold." Clara took her seat as if she was sitting on a throne. She didn't even glance at Lydia, who was placing the bowls carefully. "Could you hurry up, Lydia?" she said sharply. "The soup's getting cold." Lydia froze for a second, then whispered, "Yes, ma'am." She wasn't even married to anyone, yet Clara spoke to her like a servant. My heart tightened. Lydia was my quiet one, gentle, patient, too soft for this world. We all sat down. I bowed my head to pray, but Clara sighed loudly. "Oh, please, Margaret," she said with a fake laugh. "You don't need to make it so serious. We're not in church." I lifted my eyes and met hers. "We still give thanks before we eat, Clara. Some habits are not for show." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Mom, please, let's just eat." So I said the prayer silently inside my heart. As the meal began, Clara dominated the table like always. She talked non-stop about her friends, their vacations, their designer clothes. "Do you know what Sophie wore to the dinner?" she asked, waving her fork like a baton. "A dress worth $5,000. Can you believe that? She said her husband bought it just because she wanted to feel special. That's what love looks like." Ethan smiled proudly, glancing at me. "You hear that, Mom? That's what a man does for his wife." I didn't reply. I just kept eating slowly, quietly. Lydia's head was down, her spoon barely moving. Then Clara turned to her and smirked. "Lydia, have you ever been to a real party? Not those boring church things." Lydia looked up, startled. "No, I don't really go out much." "I can tell," Clara said, laughing. "You should. It might help you learn how to talk to people." Ethan laughed along, like it was funny. I set my fork down. "Clara, that's enough," I said firmly. "You don't speak to my daughter that way." Oh, come on, Margaret," she replied with fake sweetness. "I was only teasing. You're too sensitive." "No," I said. "Respect is not teasing. She's your sister-in-law, not your maid." Clara's smile thinned. "Sometimes I wonder, Margaret, why you're so protective of her. You act like she's some precious jewel. Maybe if you treated everyone equally, your son wouldn't feel like a stranger in his own home." Ethan looked up, confused but quiet. Clara saw the opening and went for it. "Your mother can't stand seeing you happy, Ethan," she said. "She likes control. That's why she keeps Lydia here, so she can feel needed, so she can keep playing the saint." I stared at her in disbelief. "You have some nerve, Clara. You've lived under my roof for 3 years, eating my food, using my name, and you dare. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Mom, stop! Clara's not your enemy! Then what is she, Ethan? I asked, my voice trembling. Look at her. She's turning you against your family. Clara gasped dramatically. See? She hates me. She's jealous of what we have. I almost laughed. Jealous? Of her? Of what? Her arrogance? Her lies? But the word jealous struck Ethan like a nail in soft wood. He pushed his chair back. I'm tired of this, Mom, he said. You've never liked Clara. You judge her because she's not like you or Lydia, because she's confident, because she knows her worth. She knows manipulation, I shot back. That's what she knows. You can't even see how she's pulling your strings. Enough, he shouted. You've controlled me since I was a kid. You tell me who to love, what to do, how to live. I'm done. Lydia's fork clattered onto her plate. Ethan, please don't. Stay out of it, Lydia, he snapped. Roller, you've always been the favourite, haven't you? The quiet little angel Mom can do no wrong with. I stood up, trembling but firm. Don't talk to your sister that way. Don't you dare. Oh, look at that, Clara said softly, smiling with victory. She's protecting her princess again. That was it. Something in me broke. Years of holding this family together, of swallowing pain, of pretending everything was fine, it all boiled over. Clara, I said coldly, you are poison to this family. For a moment, silence. Even the rain outside stopped sounding. Then Ethan's voice cracked through it like thunder. Don't you talk to my wife like that. And before I could even take another breath, his hand came across my face. The sound was sharp, quick, unreal. It wasn't just the pain, it was the disbelief. My own son, my only son, had slapped me. Lydia screamed. The plate shattered as she jumped up. I stood frozen, my hand pressed against my cheek. I could taste the salt of my own tears, though I didn't remember starting to cry. Clara stood behind him, lips curled in satisfaction, her eyes cold. She didn't even flinch. Ethan, I whispered. My voice came out thin, almost invisible. You just... He turned away, his breathing heavy, his chest rising and falling like waves crashing on a shore. I'm done, he said. I'm done living in this house like a child. You'll never stop trying to control me. Ethan, please, Lydia sobbed. She's your mother. He ignored her, grabbed Clara's hand and headed for the door. Clara tossed her hair, smirking. As they stepped out, I found my voice again, soft but steady. You'll regret this one day, Ethan. He turned halfway, his eyes filled with anger he didn't even understand. I'll make my own family without your rules, he shouted. Then the door slammed. The rain started again, harder this time. Lydia ran to me, holding my shoulders. Mom, are you okay? Say something, please. I looked at her, my sweet girl with tears streaming down her cheeks, and I felt something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Just hollow, empty, like a house after the lights go out. I sat down slowly. It's all right, I said softly. Let him go. But Mom, let him go, Lydia. My voice trembled, but I forced a small smile. Sometimes the ones we raise to love us forget who taught them love in the first place. We sat in silence. Only the rain spoke for a while. The food on the table was cold. The room smelled of shame and broken pride. After a while, Lydia started to clean up. I could see her hands shaking as she gathered the dishes. I wanted to tell her to stop, to rest, but I couldn't find the words. I was afraid my voice would break. When she turned to leave the room, I finally spoke again. Lydia? She stopped, looked back at me, her eyes red and swollen. I smiled faintly through the pain and said, Don't cry, my child. The wind always returns where it started. She frowned softly, confused, but one day she'd understand. That night I sat by the window long after Lydia had gone to bed. The rain eased into a drizzle. The world outside was dark and quiet, except for the occasional flash of lightning. I touched my cheek again, still burning where his hand had landed. I thought of the little boy who used to run to me when he was scared of thunder. The same boy who once said, Mom, I'll never leave you. And I whispered into the darkness, then what changed? Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was love twisted into something ugly. Maybe it was me, too strict, too protective. Or maybe some people just have to lose everything before they find themselves again. But deep inside, I knew this story wasn't over. I could feel it in my bones, like the quiet after a storm before the next wave hits. Ethan thought he was walking away free. But life has a way of turning circles, just like the wind that always returns home. And when it does, it brings everything it once carried, tears, regrets, truth no one can hide from. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the rain fall until morning. Not because I was broken, but because something inside me was waking up. Something that had been quiet too long. And that something whispered softly in my heart, "This house will remember, and so will he." If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from and how did this story speak to you? 5 years. It sounds short when you say it out loud, but when you live through it, one quiet morning, one sleepless night at a time, it's like a lifetime. The house that once echoed with voices now breathes in whispers. Lydia and I are the only ones left, and even our conversations are soft, careful, like we're afraid to wake old ghosts. Ethan never called, never visited, not even on my birthday. At first, I waited. Every time the gate creaked, my heart jumped. Every unknown number on the phone made my hands shake. But after the first year, I stopped hoping. The silence became familiar. Painful, yes, but familiar. Still, mothers don't stop loving. We just learn to love quietly. Lydia grew up faster than she should have. She took a part-time job while finishing college, coming home late and exhausted but still smiling. "I'll make you proud, Mom," she'd say. "You already do," I'd answer. Even on days when I barely had enough energy to say more. She was all I had left of family, my soft-spoken girl who'd been treated like a shadow by her brother and Clara. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at the old family photos on the wall. Ethan's picture was still there, right between mine and her father's. She never asked me to take it down. She just dusted it carefully every weekend. Uncle Raymond, my late husband's brother, came around more often after Ethan left. He always arrived with a smile too wide and perfume too strong. "Margaret," he'd say, patting my shoulder, "you shouldn't worry about managing the estate. Leave the numbers to me. You just rest and enjoy life." I didn't enjoy much of anything back then, but I nodded anyway. Raymond had always been the type to talk more than he listened. Still, I thought maybe he meant well until I noticed the missing pieces. The first piece was the land behind the old workshop. Sold without my signature. Then it was a small property in my name that suddenly didn't exist on paper. When I asked questions, Raymond smiled and said it was just paperwork confusion. But confusion doesn't sign deeds. It didn't take long before I saw the pattern. Every missing document, every delay, every unexplained withdrawal, they all pointed to him. And Clara. Yes, Clara, I saw her face everywhere. Not in person, but online. She posted pictures in shiny cars, at expensive restaurants, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her captions were always sharp, polished and cruel. Hard work pays off, not tears. Some people wait for blessings, others marry them. And Ethan? He stood beside her in every photo, smiling that fake smile. The one I used to think meant happiness. They looked rich, successful, like the world had forgotten what they did. But I knew the truth. Their so-called success was built on what they stole from me. From us. Raymond handled my estate, Clara handled him. Together, they siphoned everything they could, thinking I'd never notice. And maybe once upon a time I wouldn't have. But grief teaches you to listen with more than your ears. So I said nothing. I smiled when Raymond visited. I nodded when he boasted about managing my finances. And while they were busy counting what they thought was mine, I was quietly building something that would never be theirs. It started small. One afternoon, Lydia and I were walking home from the market. She stopped in front of a little shop for rent. Nothing special, just an old brick building with a cracked sign and peeling paint. But the windows caught the sunlight just right, and she smiled. "Mom," she said softly, "what if we opened a bakery?" I laughed. "A bakery? We don't even have enough money for flour, let alone ovens." But Lydia just shrugged, the same gentle determination her father once had shining in her eyes. "We'll start small. We'll sell what we can. People still love your cakes, you know." She wasn't wrong. In the old days, people used to say my banana bread could heal heartbreak. Maybe that was an exaggeration, or maybe not. So we did it. I used the little savings I had left, and Lydia put in her earnings from work. We rented that small place and painted it ourselves. Adams and Daughter Bakery, the sign read when we were done. The first week, we barely sold 10 loaves. The second week, 20. But by the third month, people lined up outside before we even opened. Word spread fast. You can taste the love in their bread, they said. And they could, because it wasn't just a business. It was healing. Every cake, every roll, every cookie carried a piece of my peace and a piece of Lydia's strength. A year later, the bakery started turning profit. Small, steady, real. Raymond noticed. He came by one morning, dressed in a suit too shiny for daylight. He leaned on the counter, pretending to admire the shelves. "You've done well for yourself, Margaret. Didn't expect you to start baking." "It's honest work," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "Keeps me busy." He chuckled. "You should have told me. I could have invested. You know I like to help family." I smiled thinly. "You've helped enough, Raymond." His eyes narrowed. "Now what's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, meeting his gaze, "that I keep track of what's mine, and I know where it goes." He stiffened for a second, but then laughed it off. "Margaret, come on. You know me." "Yes," I said quietly. "That's the problem." He left with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, I pulled out a folder from the drawer in my bedroom. Old documents, estate files, property papers. Lydia sat beside me, watching. "Mom," she said gently, "why don't you just expose him? Take it to court." "Not yet," I said. "You don't fight snakes by shouting at them. You watch, you wait, and when the time comes, you make sure the door is closed before you strike." She looked uncertain. "You have a plan, don't you?" I smiled faintly. The wise woman hides her eggs before the snake comes. Lydia tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means everything that matters will be under your name soon." Her eyes widened. "Mine?" "Yes, the house, the bakery, everything. You've earned it." She shook her head. "No, Mom, I can't." "Listen to me," I said, my voice firm. "If something happens to me, I want you protected. Raymond and Clara won't stop until they've bled this family dry. You're the only one I trust." Tears welled in her eyes. "You still call them family?" I sighed. "Because sometimes blood is just water that stains." Weeks later, Raymond showed up again, pretending to check in. He brought a bottle of wine and fake good cheer. "I noticed some recent paperwork changes," he said casually, swirling his glass. "Transferring assets? To Lydia?" I didn't flinch. "Yes, it's time she learned to handle responsibility." He smiled too wide. "Interesting. You know, those assets technically came from your late husband's estate. Ethan should." I cut him off. "Ethan gave up that right when he walked out of this house." Raymond's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't make emotional decisions about family property." "Emotional?" I said, standing slowly. "You've been selling my land behind my back, and you think I'm the emotional one?" He blinked, startled. "Now hold on." "No, Raymond, you hold on," I said, my tone sharper now. "You and that woman have been busy stealing from me for years. I kept quiet because I needed time, but my silence isn't weakness, it's preparation." He forced a laugh, trying to recover. "Margaret, you're imagining things." I stepped closer, close enough that he could see I wasn't afraid anymore. "No, I'm remembering things. Every lie, every forged signature, every missing acre. I remember it all." For a moment he said nothing. Then he smiled again, colder this time. "You think you're smart, don't you? Moving everything to your daughter's name won't stop what's coming." "Maybe not," I said calmly, "but it'll slow you down." He stared at me, eyes narrowing, then set his glass down hard on the counter. "You've changed, Margaret." "No," I said softly. "I just stopped pretending not to see." He left without another word. That night I felt lighter than I had in years. The fear that had hung over me, the fear of losing everything, was gone. Because now everything that mattered was safe. Lydia and I walked through the house together, checking every room, every document. The moonlight streamed through the windows, and for once the silence felt peaceful instead of empty. "Mom," Lydia said quietly, "do you ever think Ethan will come back?" I paused. "The wind always returns where it started," I said. She looked at me the way she used to when she was little, searching for answers in my eyes. "And when it does, then we'll see what it brings with it," I replied. The next morning the bakery was busier than ever. People laughed and chatted as Lydia served them, her smile brighter than the sunlight spilling through the windows. Watching her made me proud, not just because of what we'd built, but because she'd grown into the kind of woman this world couldn't break. As I kneaded the dough, I thought about Ethan. Somewhere out there, probably still chasing the life Clara promised him. A life built on lies and other people's sweat. I wondered if he ever thought of me. I wondered if he remembered the night he walked out, the sound of the rain, my voice telling him not to cry. Maybe he did, maybe not. But life has a way of keeping score, even when we stop counting. And as I looked at Lydia, laughing behind the counter, I whispered to myself, they took what was mine, but I kept what mattered. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The breeze carried the smell of fresh bread and the sound of Lydia's humming from the kitchen. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. But deep inside, I also felt something else, a quiet knowing. The silence wouldn't last forever. The wind was shifting again, and I could almost feel it, somewhere out there, Ethan's world beginning to crumble, the cracks forming in the golden life he thought he'd built. He didn't know it yet, but everything was already circling back, because the wind always returns where it started, and when it does, it brings the storm with it. I was icing a cake when I saw the car pull up, a black luxury sedan, the kind that screams money, or at least the idea of it. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a customer. We had been getting a lot of those lately. People coming from other towns to buy Adams and Daughter bakery bread. Lydia's face had even been on the local paper 2 weeks ago, smiling, flower on her cheeks, under the headline, From Family Pain to Community Gain. But when the car door opened and I saw him step out, my hands froze. 5 years disappeared in a blink. Ethan, my son, my boy who once held my hand to cross the street, the one who swore he'd never leave me, now standing tall, expensive and distant, like a stranger wearing his face. And right beside him, as always, was Clara. Still beautiful, still poisonous. Her heels clicked against the gravel as she walked like she owned the earth. I didn't move. I just watched from the bakery window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Lydia walked in from the back, holding a tray of muffins. "Mom, who's that?" When she turned and saw them too, her smile vanished. Her hands trembled slightly, but she straightened her shoulders. "Do you want me to tell them you're not home?" "No," I said quietly. "Let's see what they want. They wouldn't come all this way without a reason." They didn't bother knocking when they reached the door. Ethan pushed it open like he used to when he was 16, entitled, careless, full of himself. He looked around the bakery, nodding slowly. "So this is what you've been doing, huh?" Clara's eyes wandered across the counter, the customers, the display of cakes. She said with a fake smile. "Cute little place smells like hard work." I wiped my hands with a cloth and stepped forward. "Ethan, Clara, Mom," he said flatly, as if the word cost him something. Clara leaned in and kissed the air beside my cheek. "Margaret, it's been too long. You look older." "Time does that," I said evenly. "Tea?" She raised an eyebrow. "Sure, why not?" Lydia appeared from the kitchen, silent, graceful. She set down cups and poured tea without a word. For a second, Clara's smile faltered, just a flicker, when she realized the girl she used to call the maid now carried herself like a woman. "Well," Ethan said, sitting down, "let's not waste time. We didn't come here to play family reunion." "No," I said. "I figured as much." Clara crossed her legs, her bracelets clinking softly. "We heard your late husband left a will. Ethan deserves his share." Lydia looked up, startled. "What will?" "Dad passed away years before." "Oh, relax, sweetheart," Clara said, waving her hand dismissively. "We just mean the estate, you know, the family house, the properties, whatever assets are still floating around. We've been doing some checking, and it seems there's still quite a bit left unaccounted for." She smiled sweetly. "And we're just here to make sure everything's divided fairly." "Fairly," I repeated. "That's a nice word. People use it when they mean take what isn't theirs." Ethan frowned. "Mom, don't start. I'm just trying to claim what's rightfully mine." "Rightfully?" I asked quietly. "You mean after you abandoned this family, stole from and humiliated your mother?" He sighed loudly, leaning back in the chair. "Are we really going to bring up the past again? You always hold grudges." "No, son," I said softly. "I hold memories. There's a difference." Clara gave a short laugh. "Oh, come on, Margaret, don't be dramatic. We're not here to fight. We just want to resolve things peacefully before lawyers get involved." Lydia stiffened beside me. "Lawyers?" "Yes," Ethan said, looking directly at me now. "If you don't want to do this the easy way, we'll go the legal route. Raymond's already talked to some people." "Raymond?" I repeated, my tone sharpening. "So he's still whispering in your ear too?" Ethan shrugged. He's been helping us manage some investments. He's family, Mom. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Family? That man couldn't spell the word if you carved it into his skin. Clara's expression hardened. Watch your mouth, Margaret. Raymond's been nothing but kind to us. Maybe if you had trusted him, instead of hoarding everything, things would have been different. Hoarding? I asked. You mean protecting what my husband and I built with our bare hands? Ethan's voice rose. You're doing it again, acting like the world owes you something. You always want control, over me, over Lydia, over everything. I wanted respect, I said firmly, but clearly that was too expensive for you. Clara rolled her eyes. This is pointless. Ethan, just tell her what the lawyers said. He straightened his jacket. Fine, Mom. Under the state's inheritance law, I have a legal right to claim part of Dad's estate, even now. And if I have to sue to get it, I will. I didn't respond right away. The customers had started to glance our way. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. Lydia quietly ushered the last few out, locked the door, and came back to stand beside me. She looked straight at Clara, her voice calm. You really came all this way to beg, didn't you? Clara blinked. Excuse me? You're in debt, Lydia said, her tone steady. That's why you're here. Raymond's fake investments collapsed and now you're broke. Ethan stood abruptly. Watch your mouth, Lydia. No, she said, not flinching. I used to, not anymore. Clara's smirk returned. You should be careful, sweet girl. You might have a bakery, but you're still just a maid who lucked out. Lydia stepped closer, her eyes unwavering. Careful, Clara. Even poison can be sweet until it's swallowed. The silence that followed cut deeper than any scream. Ethan's face turned red. Enough of this nonsense, he shouted. I came here to talk about my rights, not to be insulted by a child. I finally spoke, my voice calm but sharp as glass. You're welcome to claim what's left of your respect, Ethan. That's the only thing you still own. He froze. Clara looked from him to me, her smile faltering again. You think you're so clever, Margaret, but money has rules. Emotions don't change the law. Neither do lies, I said. She tilted her head. We'll see about that. You might be sitting on your little bakery throne right now, but don't forget who you're dealing with. We have lawyers, we have proof. I smiled just slightly. Then bring them. Ethan blinked. What? Bring your lawyers, I repeated, my tone calm. Come back tomorrow. I'll have everything ready for you. Clara narrowed her eyes. Everything. Everything, I said. All the papers, all the documents, every proof you think you need. Let's settle this properly. Ethan hesitated, sensing something in my tone. Mom, don't play games. No games, I said, just truth. Clara rose from her chair, brushing invisible dust from her skirt. Fine, we'll come tomorrow, and when we do, I expect you to be reasonable. Reasonable, I said with a faint smile. I'll be more than reasonable. They turned to leave. Ethan paused by the door, glancing back. You're really not going to apologize, are you? For what? I asked. For making me walk away, he said bitterly. I met his gaze and said softly, No, Ethan, you made that choice. The door was open both ways. He stared at me for a moment longer, then walked out. Clara followed, her perfume trailing behind like smoke. When the car engine started, Lydia exhaled shakily. Mom, what are you planning? I sat down, feeling the weight of years settle over me again. Tomorrow, they'll come expecting wealth, I said quietly. But they'll find truth instead. Lydia frowned. Truth? I nodded. And truth is something they can't steal. That night, I stayed up late at the dining table, spreading out old files and new documents, letters, signatures, and records. The moonlight poured through the curtains, falling on the same desk where I once taught Ethan how to write his name. My hands trembled a little as I opened the file marked Property Transfer. Lydia Adams, the ink was still crisp and black. Every asset, the bakery, the house, the land, was legally under Lydia's name now. For years I'd been patient, waiting for the day they would return, because people like Clara always do. Greed is a circle, it always comes back home. I closed the folder gently and whispered to the silence, Tomorrow the wind returns. The next morning was bright and calm, too calm. The bakery smelled of cinnamon and hope. Lydia moved quietly, watching me. Do you think they'll actually show up? She asked. Oh, they'll come, I said. Greed always keeps its appointments. And right on cue, a car horn sounded outside. Through the window, I saw Clara's smirk and Ethan's proud posture. They stepped out as if walking onto a stage. Clara looped her arm through his and whispered something that made him smile. I couldn't hear it, but I could read her lips. By tomorrow, we'll own everything. I smiled to myself, my heart steady. No, Clara, by tomorrow you'll finally realise you never owned anything at all. Morning came heavy with silence. Even the birds outside seemed to sense what was coming. I woke up before sunrise, made coffee and sat by the window. Lydia was still asleep. Her face, calm and unbothered, reminded me that peace is a choice, even when the storm is already knocking at your door. Today was the day everything hidden would come to light. I didn't need to pray for strength. I had already done my crying, my forgiving, my waiting. Now it was time to finish the story. By 10 o'clock, the air outside was thick with tension. A black car pulled up first, the same one from yesterday. Out came Clara, sunglasses perched on her face, her confidence shining like polished glass. Ethan followed, wearing a navy blue suit that looked too expensive for someone in debt. And then came Raymond. He looked older, paler, but still carried that same arrogant smirk. The kind of face that believes it can talk its way out of anything. They didn't even greet me when they entered. Instead, Clara spoke first, her voice dripping with false politeness. Good morning, Margaret. We hope you're ready to settle this once and for all. I am, I said simply. Please sit down. Our lawyer, Mrs. Walton, a calm older woman with sharp eyes, was already there, her files neatly stacked. Lydia sat beside me, her hand resting gently on mine. Ethan and his group sat opposite us. Their lawyer, a young man in a shiny grey suit, immediately began shuffling papers like a magician preparing for a trick. Let's get to it, he said, forcing a smile. Mr. Adams and his wife have come today to claim their rightful portion of the Adams family estate as the only son and natural heir. Mrs. Walton didn't even blink. Before we begin, let's make sure we're all on the same page regarding ownership and legal status. Of course, the young lawyer said confidently. She opened her folder slowly, like someone unwrapping a secret. According to the most recent and legally verified documents, all assets previously under Mrs. Margaret Adams's name were transferred 3 years ago to her daughter, Ms. Lydia Adams. The room went silent. Clara blinked. I'm sorry, what? Ethan frowned. That's impossible. I'm the son. Mrs. Walton nodded politely. Yes, but under Georgia state law, a parent has the right to reassign or transfer property as long as it's done legally and of sound mind, which in this case it was. Clara laughed, sharp and nervous. No, this must be some mistake. Margaret, tell her this isn't true. I looked her straight in the eye. It's true. Her smile faltered. You mean to tell me you gave everything to her? She pointed at Lydia like she was spitting poison. The little church mouse? Lydia didn't flinch. She just folded her hands neatly in her lap. Yes, that's exactly what she means. Ethan leaned forward. Mom, this doesn't make sense. You wouldn't just cut me out. You love me. I do love you, I said softly. But love doesn't excuse betrayal. He slammed his fist against the table. You can't do this to me, Mrs. Walton calmly flipped another page. Actually, she already did, and there's more. Raymond shifted uneasily. More? Yes, Mrs. Walton continued. Mr. Ethan Adams was legally removed from all inheritance rights 3 years ago. Ethan froze. What? She cleared her throat and began reading aloud from the legal document. Due to willful disrespect, abandonment and repeated acts of emotional and financial betrayal, I, Margaret Adams, hereby revoke all inheritance rights from my son, Ethan Adams. This decision is made without malice but in pursuit of peace. The words hung in the air like a hammer dropping. Clara's jaw dropped open. You can't do that. She did, Mrs. Walton said firmly. Ethan turned to me, his voice shaking. Mom, how could you do this to your own son? Because you stopped being one when you raised your hand to me, I said quietly. And every year after, when you stayed gone, not once checking if I was alive or dead. He blinked rapidly, his lips parting as if to argue, but no sound came out. Clara, however, wasn't ready to give up. This is outrageous, she snapped. We'll contest this in court. You can't just hand everything to that girl. You have no proof we ever wronged you. Lydia stood up slowly. Her calmness made Clara visibly nervous. Actually, we do have proof. Mrs. Walton passed her a folder. Lydia opened it, revealing photos, screenshots and printed bank statements. These, Lydia said, placing them on the table, are records of property sales conducted illegally under my mother's estate. Signatures were forged, deeds were altered, and guess whose names appear on those transactions? Clara's confidence cracked. That's ridiculous. Lydia continued, her voice sharp but composed. Here's the recording of Raymond discussing one of those sales with you, Clara. He was unaware he was being recorded at the time. She pressed play on a small recorder. Raymond's voice filled the room. Don't worry, Clara. She's too old to notice. Once we sell the East property, you'll get your cut. There was a pause. Then Clara's voice followed. Good. Ethan thinks it's just another investment. He doesn't ask questions anyway. The colour drained from Ethan's face. He turned slowly toward her. What did you say? Clara stuttered. Ethan, I didn't mean. But he was already standing. You lied to me? You used me to steal from my own mother? Don't you dare twist this, she snapped back, her mask crumbling. You were fine spending the money. You didn't care where it came from. Enough, Raymond barked, standing as well. This is nonsense. You have no right to record private conversations. Mrs. Walton raised a brow. Actually, under state law, one-party consent is legal. The recordings are admissible. Raymond's face turned red. You can't. This is a set-up. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. 2 police officers stepped in, calm and professional. One of them nodded at Mrs. Walton. We have the warrants. Warrants, Clara whispered. Yes, Mrs. Walton said smoothly. For fraud, forgery and misappropriation of funds. Mr. Raymond Adams and Mrs. Clara Adams, you're both under investigation. Raymond took a step back. This is ridiculous. I demand my lawyer. You already have one, Mrs. Walton said dryly, but I doubt he can save you. Clara turned to Ethan in panic. Do something. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Ethan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. His lips trembled. I trusted you, he whispered. You ruined everything. The officers read them their rights and led Raymond toward the door. Clara tried to follow, still pleading, still cursing, her voice cracking with anger. Ethan just stood there, motionless, hollow lost. When the door finally closed behind them, the room went still again. I stood up slowly and faced him. His eyes were red, his hands shaking. Mom, he whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I looked at him for a long time. All the years of hurt, disappointment and love clashed inside me like a storm. He looked smaller now, not the proud man who had left me, but a broken boy who finally saw the wreckage he'd helped create. You slapped your mother, Ethan, I said softly, and hugged your enemies. You traded your roots for borrowed wings. Now fly, if you still can. He sank to his knees. I'm sorry, Mom. Please. I made a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. Tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't move. You knew enough to leave. You knew enough to choose her over us. Choices have prices, son. You're just paying yours now. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. I can forgive you someday, I said quietly. But I can't fix you. That part is yours. Lydia came to my side and placed her arm around me. Let's go, Mom. We turned and walked toward the door. Behind us, Ethan's sobs filled the room, breaking something deep inside me, but not enough to turn around. Outside, the air felt cleaner. The courthouse steps were warm under my feet. Lydia squeezed my hand gently. It's over, she said. No, I replied softly. It's just finally balanced. As we walked to the parking lot, a familiar sound made me pause, the rumble of our bakery truck. The logo gleamed in the sunlight. Adams and Daughter, baked with love. The same name Ethan once mocked. Lydia smiled. Dad would have loved that truck, I nodded. He would have loved the woman driving it even more. She laughed softly and wrapped her arm around me. As we climbed in, I looked back at the courthouse one last time. Through the glass doors, I could still see Ethan, shoulders slumped, face buried in his hands. My heart ached, but I whispered to myself, some lessons need to hurt to last. The engine started. The road stretched out ahead, open and wide. And as we drove away, I spoke the words that had lived in my heart all along. The truth this whole story had been leading to. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. The wind blew through the window, soft and warm, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't carry pain, it carried peace.